as we talk today, if you can be specific to your business, that would be great and help everybody understand a little more about what you do. The other thing is at the end, we're going to have a little time for Q&A. So be thinking about, how can I make this applicable to my business? As we've talked and as we prepared a little while ago and have had a number of conversations, one of the key principles that we want to have you apply is that when you walk out of here, you'll have something useful that you can take into your business today and make it yourself and make your business better. So we're going to jump into a pretty broad question. We'll dive into this title of Understanding and Leveraging Key Trends in Manufacturing. But I'm going to ask our panel here, because many of them, not all of them, Michelle's on the outside of this one, have followed a CEO. So what was that experience like to come into a business that was established by a founder, and now you're stepping in as a CEO, and all of the challenges and opportunities and benefits of that? If you could just maybe express those thoughts, and we'll start with Bill and we can go to Val. I don't mean to exclude you, Michelle.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sure. So Myers-Manx, again, long history, was purchased by two co-founders in 2021. And really fantastic visionary people, great designers, great vision. But, there comes a point where you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm really not the person to scale a manufacturing organization. I don't have that skill set. And so I think it takes some humility, and it takes some, honest reflection on the part of the founder to say, I got this started, it's a beautiful idea, and maybe I need to bring in some help. Maybe, to take it really to the next level, then you need to bring in the right people. And that choice is really important because, what I'll expand on a little later is that the entrepreneurial space and the startup business doesn't always lend itself to the person that's the vice president of something from some giant corporation. There really is you don't get an admin when somebody says, we ought to do this. It's usually you that has to do it. So you have to have that kind of expectation going in. It's not chaotic, if that makes sense to everybody.
Great, thanks, Bill. Val?
Sure. So some of you may know Joel Clark. He was one of the founders, along with his brother, of Kodiak. You may not be aware, the company is 30 years old this year. It really took off 7 years ago when Joel went on Shark Tank with his with Cam. And we reached over $500 million retail sales value last year. So we're growing super fast, to your point, and we're actually the #1 pancake mix in America right now. So pretty cool that it started in Utah. So when I interviewed with Joel, I was at Campbell's. I was running the snacks division. I've spent over 20 years in food. And I asked a lot of questions about this very topic because I was very warned, gosh, the first CEO after a founder could be absolutely disastrous. And I remember asking Joel, what is your greatest passion? What fires you up about this? It took them 10 years to reach $1 million. Why did you not give up? And it was very clear to me, Joel, one, he'll tell you he was crazy. He's like, we should have given up a long time ago, but we didn't. So he was a big risk taker, and he's a big foodie. So he just really loved the ingredients. He started selling his mom's pancake mix in a red wagon, if you've probably read the story, just a few miles from here. And his passion was around innovation and product development. My passion is around building. I'm a finance person, from education, and big part of my career, and sales and marketing. So I thought, gosh, we have really complementary passions. You love to innovate, and I love to build teams, build brand, build businesses, and scale. And so he and I really came to an agreement of what we're both going to do. And he moved into the chair role, so he's technically my boss, best boss I've ever had. And so we also aligned on decision rights. So I said, you got a team here who they love you for all the good reasons. But if they come to you and they want your opinion, that's going to usurp my authority. So a big thing was just aligning up front on just really the protocols, and how we're going to handle those situations. And they did happen. Unfortunately, we were very aligned. So I think those are two things, understanding your passion and how you can complement each other, and just being really aligned on how you're going to manage the day-to-day business and operations. And when issues like that come up that could confuse the org, how you're going to handle that.
Great. Thank you for that. Let me just ask a really quick follow-on question. If I'm a founder, how do I prepare for you?
Yeah.
I that's a great question. How you prepare, it goes back to I think you have to recognize the need first, but there's no chance that there aren't going to be some difficult conversations and some long nights, and I think it's almost like you have to just commit to the fact that somebody else is going to have a different opinion, and you're going to have to be comfortable learning how to fight fair, if I can say it that way, or argue productively. There's some you set the ground rules in the beginning. I would use the analogy. It's not a marriage, but it maybe is even as much and more significant because you're talking about somebody's life's passion, and so you come in and say, these are great things that you did. These are things that we need to do differently. And, it takes a lot of commitment. So I think commitment is one word that I would use. And then just patience.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess I would build a little on, it's like humility, so one of the things that I loved about Joel is his self-awareness. He's like, I got it here, but I know I can't get it there. And you have that experience. And then it's that respect back. Well, I could never have gotten it to here. So, and that mutual respect. I always found like one of the more difficult conversations around people. So when I came in, it's like, there's some people where we just need a different capability. And it may have been a legacy employee. And so those kinds of conversations, to your point, is like where you can have, conflict and drive to a resolution that's mutually beneficial, even if you don't agree. And that has to happen, right? Because you're driving change in an organization. And for me, it was always reminding myself, is like honoring the legacy. So I would tell the team, just because we're changing doesn't mean what we did was bad. And I think that's really important too, because to your point, it's their life passion. It's like their baby. And so you don't want to ever reflect negatively on that. But then it's the recognition of, well, we aspire to be the next generation most loved food brand. In order to get there, we need to do some things different, acknowledging, what was done really well, but then helping them understand that change curve of where it needs to get better. And I always had Joel advocate as well. So I would bring him into our town halls every once in a while and say, this is different and it's good, and here's why. And so that was really helpful too, showing that united front in front of the org.
I love that. So clarity up front, alignment around the big objective, and then constant communication as you go through to make sure it moves forward, because there will be disagreements.
And humility.
And
that's for sure.
That's the key one. Okay.
On both ends.
So another little follow-on question. We've got an interesting dynamic with two of the panelists here. Two of the panelists have been co-CEOs, which you don't see very often. And you can imagine one following an existing, an original founder, CEO. How is that? So this is directed towards Bill and Michelle. I'll have Michelle answer first. How do you navigate the co-CEO role? And you both have very different ones, because your co-CEO just spoke in a panel prior and is also your husband.
That's right. So you have so many dynamics. So you play to your strengths. So it's my husband, John. So what we did is we looked at what we're good at. John is amazing at marketing. He's great at technology. So those are his lanes. And then my lanes are all of the get it done lanes, all the checklist lanes. That's what I do well. So operations, customer service, warehouse, manufacturing, making everything run really smoothly, HR. And that's really like how we did it. You had to have that line in the sand, and it works really well when we have it split. And there are moments where, we have to come together and we have to have those healthy arguments. And it's kind of, similar to what you were just describing, where we have to have a really healthy fight. But yeah, you walk in the door at home and we aim to stop talking about work. It doesn't always work, but we try. But yeah, that's how it works.
Which would feel like it would continue all day long. I'm proud of you guys. Work never stops. Bill, yours is a little different.
Yeah, just to add that. So my co-CEO partner, Jennifer Flake, was incredibly experienced in communications and marketing. She was global director of communications for Ford Motor Company. So just an incredible background in all the things that I'm really terrible at. And so it was really great because, someone comes to you and says, hey, we're going to take your job, we're going to split it in half, we're going to give you all the stuff you like, and we're going to give her all the stuff that you don't. And so that was, good on the surface. And I learned a lot from her. And she's since had to step down, and I really miss her at times because you have to form this kind of impenetrable relationship. You can't, the organization from above and below and the side will try and divide you, and they'll try and say, well, don't you agree with me, and let's usurp the other person. And so we had to be almost ruthlessly loyal to each other. And so, and again, it's that conversation you have in the beginning, that if this is going to work, we are going to have to commit to this. And there were instances where we both went in a room and had those difficult conversations. And but it was a really beneficial, positive thing that we managed around. And so, again, now I have the full job, and I'm trying to deal with the things that I don't know well. And I call Jennifer a lot for her advice. But it can be a really positive thing, but you do have to commit to it. And it's interpersonal relationships. You have to learn how to fight fair, and you have to argue your point, and you have to respect the other person, and you have to just commit to it up front. Because if you let any crack, if you let anybody come between you, if you let anything happen, then it just disintegrates, and it's not terribly effective because the team's watching everything you do.
It's true, because then you have to agree on, what the decision is and walk out the door, and everybody's in agreement because the team is watching. So, yeah.
And if you get dragged down a limb, you always back your partner, and then you go into a room and say, that was the wrong thing, we need to undo that. But you never have that conversation in front of anybody else.
Yeah, the kids can't see mom and dad fight, right? And this is what's great about business, is there's no one answer on how to build it. And it's dynamic for every business, and it's different for every business. And there's a lot of ways to build and grow, which I love about that, because it isn't something you see every day, but when it works incredibly well.
Well, and so it's, 1 + 1 is 3. And sometimes it's 1 - 1 is 0. And so you have to be 1 + 1 is 3. And if you do it right, it can be.
Yeah, so let's transition a little bit from the leadership into how to relating to manufacturing, as we're all manufacturing companies here. How do you take that vision that you have or that you've adopted and that you've got to adjust to your own? And how do you take the vision to building and then to industrialization and then commercialization?
Sure, I'll start. So we came to a point in our business where we realized that the cost was so high to manufacture outside of the company in a lot of respects, especially with our licensed partners and such, with those rings. And so we decided to bring that in-house, and we could have done it one of two ways. We could acquire a company or acquire a team or a knowledge base, and we went the second route. And it was really scary and really costly, and could have totally gone belly up. And there were many points at which we were like, why did we do this? Which we should talk about at some point. But that's why we chose to get the cost down, to get profits higher, but also to allow a little bit more capital for the business to do other things. And so that really helped us stop being hand-tied, by our manufacturers. And nowadays, we are able to have several co-manufacturers as well as our own in-house team. And so we can kind of leverage, in times of needing to go into Black Friday and needing more stock, we can, leverage all of those guys as well.
We'll kind of go down the line a little bit, maybe, Bill, in honor of my Myers Makes scarf. So I had Kodiak pancakes this morning. I'm wearing the Myers Makes scarf. I didn't arrive one in. I should have. And I got size for my Manly Bands this morning.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks to the last night. So I'm all set. I'm fully into this panel. Let's continue on, Bill. How do you take this vision that you've received and also make your own and realize it?
Well, and it's, so my background, I worked for Ford for a long time, and I helped co-found an electric vehicle company. And so I've tried this a couple of different ways at a couple of different levels, different organizations. And what and then having this legacy brand that so many people know and love, and just not screwing that up is a really important thing. And so the product development has to be done first, and the product development has to indicate that there's volume for your product. And so in the early days, you've got investors who aren't sure if you know what you're doing or not. They think you do, and they read your resume and they like you, but there's still a element of doubt. And so it's, before you commit to huge investments, in my opinion, you need to make sure that you've got a product that people like. And so you need to get, you need to have some exploration. It's the lean startup. It's get something out, make sure people like it, try and avoid making the big investment in capital, and stay flexible. And I think there's an art to deciding, okay, this is something that's going to win. We need to go put a bunch of money in our own manufacturing plant. We need to scale. We need to go. But if you get that wrong, you go bankrupt and you lose. And so it's, resist the urge to run out and do that before you're sure. And so delay that as long as you can. And so we've looked at, we're partnering with a local Utah manufacturer to get it started. All of our product development techniques are very flexible. It means that the piece cost early on is kind of high, and the margins are lower than they could be. But you survive to the next step. You can always optimize. You can always make it more efficient. You can always get a better deal on a part from someplace in the world. But if you do all that before you know that you have the demand for it, then you don't get to do it very long. And so that's what I would say. It's a very complicated, I guess, kind of answer, but it's.
So that is great advice. Great direction.
Yeah.
Val.
So I have had the benefit of working I was CEO for 2 private equity-backed food companies, and then 3 large, Kraft, Mondelez, Campbell. So I've seen a very different manufacturing footprint across all of those. I've been in situations where we've made for others, we've co-manned, and then we've owned our own. At Kodiak, actually, we call it asset light. Our strategy is really focused on innovation, moving into adjacent categories, and moving fast. And that's how we feel we're going to win. And so having an asset light footprint really helps us. And that's essentially, we are all co-manufactured. And we have, at this point now, over 12 different co-mans that we work with. And that enables us to be extremely agile. So, Bill mentioned this, test it first, get it out there. For us, we can innovate really fast with our co-mans with very low risk. You're not putting up capital. And then based on the consumer response, we can then, think about an alternate approach. We have also set up different situations where you can actually own the line within their infrastructure, which is very cost beneficial, so less capital up front. And then you can actually move quicker because you're not attempting a greenfield or a brownfield on your own, which I've done. And that takes a very long time, always costs more, takes longer, much harder to start up. So I think it's a little bit lower risk. But there's pros and cons to both. I mean, when you hit a certain scale, then you have the cost benefit of internally sourcing. But it's challenging. And I've lived through COVID producing food at 16 of my own plants. And that was very challenging as well. So I think it's depends on your brand, depends on the stage you're at, depends on your strategy. If you're wanting to innovate and the value of that potentially over a couple of margin points to drive efficiency. One of the things I'll end on is when I was a part of the bigger organization, you have these fully depreciated assets and you're very worried about fixed cost absorption and other financial measures. And so you tended to think about, we would call it asset out innovation. And I think one of the benefits of being smaller and nimble is you're always thinking about the consumer first. So it's outside in. And so having that agile footprint really allowed us to always put the consumer first. So it's what are we trying to solve for the consumer by innovating in this space versus how do we utilize our manufacturing footprint the best, to innovate.
Yeah, I have to add. So while I was at Ford, 2008 was a really difficult time. Alan Mulally had just come in, and he started making these statements like, we're going to start building cars that people want to drive. And, we all kind of looked around like, what have we been doing to this point? and so what we realized is that we were building cars to fill up plants, to utilize existing assets that were, within a certain investment with a certain bound, and they were boring. And it was really that sort of simple, kind of dumb statement that we all laughed at, but it's true. You get locked into building something that fits the assets that you have, and you're not really looking at what your customers want. So that's a critical lesson.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's actually one of the reasons we brought manufacturing in-house as well, because we can innovate so fast. We can go out to the shop and say, hey, I've got this Viking knife. It's weird, but it's so cool and it's authenticated. Can you make this into a ring somehow? And the guys are like, yeah, cool. We'll do something cool with it. And then, go by John and see his awesome Viking ring. But, it's just so cool what we can do, in a day. So, yeah, absolutely customer first. We're always sending out surveys to ask our customers what they're interested in. We'll even do that prior to bringing on a new licensor, just trying to figure out, okay, are you more interested in Ford or GM or Jeep? What's more interesting to you? So, yeah, customer first, 100%.
I love that. We're going to come back to technology. Casey's got some great thoughts and questions about that. As we're now starting to get very specific on manufacturing, we talked a little bit about this outsourcing. Now you've illustrated some things about insourcing, or even just deciding from the get-go we're going to manufacture in-house. Let's dive in a little deeper on that. As you make that decision, as you inherit that decision that was made, and you begin to navigate that, there are a lot of considerations, some risks, things like protecting IP, quality control, relationships, tariffs potentially. And how are you thinking about that? What are you seeing on the horizon? And how are you daily making a decision if you're outsourcing? Because every day you outsource, you're making that decision every day. I'm going to outsource as though, and every day you have it in the internal manufacturing, you're making that decision. So there's a number of things that go into that constant conversation. And maybe we can start with Val, and then we'll work our way back.
Yeah. Well, you definitely need a good lawyer. I will tell you that, because you need really good contracts and you need to protect your IP. And that was, some of the larger organizations I've been at, that was always a really big consideration, is just that risk. And you really need to have protection around your IP. And you need to work with people you really trust. So there's a lot of legacy co-manufacturers, some that we use right here in Utah. A lot of our products produced in Utah. And you have a business relationship with them. I always say it's people first always. It always starts with people, and it's people that you really trust, that you can, they're making your food. The other piece, one of the things I've done since I've been here, is bring in just a stellar operations and quality and food safety team. And just because you co-man, you still have that responsibility. And, we do all the rigorous audits, and just as if it was our own plant. And so I actually was fortunate to bring my head of operations from Campbell's. He used to run Hearthside. So just folks with 30 plus years of manufacturing experience and building that out and building the quality team out. So I think it's like making sure you have really good contracts, making sure you have the right team, even if you're co-manufacturing, and then being very smart about the partners you pick.
And then the best contracts are the ones that you put in a drawer and forget about forever, because you don't really need them. You don't have to enforce them. And so it goes back to what you're saying. You have good partners, you have people you trust, and it's really critical. Now, the other thing that I couldn't agree more is you can outsource tasks, but you can't outsource thinking. You still own what the production is. And so the idea that it's asset light doesn't mean that you don't have a staff, that you aren't paying attention, that you don't have people to make sure that things are going correctly. Because if you just leave a co-manufacturer alone, they will do what they think is best, and often it won't be in your best interest. So don't think that you won't have a resident staff. One of my resident staff is in the room today, very experienced engineer who makes sure that we're all aligned. Because you have things that happen daily. There's a question, is this okay? Should I keep making it this way? There's a defect. Is it acceptable for production or not? And so then having all of that really well thought through, because you're going to have problems. It's just like your co-founders and your co-CEOs and your other business relationships. There's no chance that you're not going to have challenges and opportunities and problems to solve, and however you think of that. And so don't, that's going to happen. Prepare for it. And the sooner you can get to know people, the sooner you can have those difficult conversations, whatever it takes, go have a beer with them, get to know them as people, because you need those relationships. It's critically important.
Yeah, for us, the future is sort of being creative and scaling. So one of the things that we've done in manufacturing, it's very specialized. Each department within manufacturing is very specialized. And we have a great warehouse staff that's very loyal and amazing, and a lot of them are very creative. So I proposed this idea of training some of them on manufacturing when we needed a little bit more help in manufacturing prior to a holiday, which October is a very slow period for us. So it was a great time for those folks who were interested in manufacturing to go over and learn, and then to actually help and get rings ready and on the shelf and stocked up for holiday. And it worked out so well, because then we were able to utilize a staffing agency to help us bring in some more warehouse staffs, because it's just a much easier position to learn in a day, So we just kind of created a little bit more of a teamwork environment and started helping each other out to start to scale a little bit more. Okay, so, you need more help today, you need more help tomorrow, and then we can start to scale the teams just in general, add a night shift, create more relationships with co-manufacturers as well. But that creativity, I think, is so important in scaling and figuring out what the next step is.
And this is such a great question. And it's hard because you also have to ask the question of when, right? How long? There's a lot of the timeline questions, and at what stage are you at as a business that you do pull that in-house like you've done, and for what reasons? Is it cost related? Is it operating capital? Is it more of how much do you have in assets to spend, and is that the best place to spend it? I've seen in the last year through our company, as we've looked and evaluated big manufacturing businesses, we put a bid on 3 of 4 businesses that went bankrupt, and we were putting a bid to buy them out of bankruptcy, U.S., European companies, and 3 of the 4 were bankrupt because they tried to manufacture in-house too quick. And they try to manufacture every little component of the product.
That's critical. And first couple of companies, we hired the smartest young engineers, and they all want to do everything themselves. And when you've got commodity pricing on something made someplace else, it's foolish to spend the time and money to invest in something that the market has already solved for you. Unless you've got a real key competitive advantage, resist that urge to do it yourself. Unless it really separates your product from everybody else in the market, don't reinvent the wheel.
It's like knowing your core competency, right? And that's we're a marketing company, we're an innovative company. When you start in-house manufacturing, I'm sure, Michelle, you lived through this, the company complexion changes, your headcount changes, your head of people and culture focuses on different things, and that's okay. You just need to be ready for it.
Yeah, you definitely need to be ready for it. That's for sure. Yeah, we had just to talk about HR for a quick sec, we had some very startup, policies, unlimited time off and such. And it's really impossible to run manufacturing with unlimited time off. So we had to dial that back, which wasn't taken very well. But yeah, at every stage, you have to just become more and more efficient. And I think what I'd like to speak on this too is the Made in America, position. So one of the things we thought would be amazing about bringing manufacturing in-house is we could say Made in America. And it turns out that you have to make every single little part in America with American-made, metals and products if you want to say Made in America. And so it was a real shock for us. And so I would say, if that's important to you and your business, then definitely look into that wholeheartedly before you jump into manufacturing, because that was something we were about a year into manufacturing, and we were like, oh, awesome. Can't use that value prop anymore.
Guess the Viking ring's off the table, Casey. Sorry. Okay, one quick follow-up. 15 seconds to 30 seconds max. A key trend in manufacturing, outsourcing, insourcing that you are thinking about constantly right now?
I think in food, it's all about health and wellness right now, and clean ingredients, which is right in our sweet spot, and working with manufacturers that have the capability to work with those ingredients, because not everyone can have that separation of like non-GMO and organic and other things. So that's a big trend for us. And we're on the right side of that, fortunately.
Thanks, Val. Bill?
Well, and you read the list of trends, and there's Industry 4.0, and there's green energy, and there's AI and how that all works. And so those are all things that we're looking down the road. We're still in the infancy as we develop our manufacturing facility and setup. And so my trend, it just goes back to good old lean manufacturing and making sure that you're following efficiency. It's first piece flow. And so it's trying to make sure that your organization, your manufacturing organization, is as efficient as possible. And so then it goes back to product development. If you develop the products wrong, if the product isn't developed correctly or efficiently, then you end up with manufacturing that isn't efficient. And so a lot of it for us is AI tools in the efficient development and the optimization of the product as we develop it. And so then we're staying very fast and flexible, not committing a lot of funds to buy expensive equipment until we have the product development done correctly. And then we'll move into cobots and optimization routines of robots and those sorts of things. But it's just new tools and new ways of saying essentially the scientific method. We're just reinventing that over and over again.
Thanks, Bill. Michelle?
Yeah, in trying to get more and more efficient, we're definitely utilizing AI quite a bit. So we use it in design just to, hey, look at this Viking knife as that example again. What can you do with this AI? Like, dream me something up. And I think somebody said this maybe in the last panel, but this idea of it just starts something for you. You're not necessarily going to go with that exact design, but it starts this weird thought process of, oh yeah, I could do that. So we use that way. Our customer service team is using PerfectBot through Gorgeous, and that is a wonderful help. It's taking care of about 1,000 tickets a month, so that's huge. And our brand tone is also kind of hard to grasp. So we're kind of this like sarcastic dude, who's telling it like it is. And it was sort of a voice that John and I developed together. And it was hard to sort of pass off. That was our baby at first, was this brand voice. How do we pass this baby off? And it's evolved certainly as we've passed it off. And so then we started utilizing AI to do the voice, and so you start to feed it prompts and you start to get, a chain basically of AI going. And then we've supplied that to our customer service team so they can have brand tone and responding to people on social media, because that was really important to us too. We didn't want to be like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not our brand tone, so we have to say, hey man, we got you. And so we utilize AI in so many different ways.
We're manly bands.
Yeah.
I love that. That's an interesting use case too. That's really great. And to follow up with that, so AI has been a big discussion. I want to leave time for the Q&A. So, and AI has been a part. Val, we kind of heard from Bill and Michelle a little bit on the AI side. How are you utilizing AI when it comes to Kodiak kegs?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's similar to Michelle on the marketing side. So we use Gorgeous as well. It's pretty much embedded in almost every third-party software we use now. We just stood up market mix analysis that I have been trying to get at every past company, but this is why I love sometimes being much more nimble, that is AI-driven, that allows us to really quickly understand it attributes our advertising spend, our trade spends, et cetera, to revenue, and we can very quickly see where we should pivot. We've also used AI to test our content, and we have an in-house creative team, so very quickly we can look at our 6s, our 15s, our 30s, and within hours our team will adjust and then put the content back out, and literally we just continue to iterate until we get it really, really effective. So we use it a ton in marketing.
So having two moderators, let's open it up to a lot more moderators. And I'd love to hear from you guys on the Q&A, what questions have come up. And one preface I love, you're going to be our first one. One preface I'll make, Jeremy did a fantastic job. Utah has become a powerhouse for this. And we've seen the power of the community coming together and what that can do. And a lot of people ask that question, why should anyone get into manufacturing? And I hope you felt a little bit of inspired of the impact that you can make in manufacturing and the strength of what Utah can be in it. And I want to give you guys a chance to ask those questions.
I'm Clark Barlow with Buttermint, and my question is in regards to when you're doing your rapid prototyping or how do you make that more efficient? Because if you're outsourcing, do you do the rapid prototyping in-house or are you outsourcing that? And how do you make that workflow work? Because whether in food or a physical product, I've found that in-house having at least some capabilities makes it much faster. So
Yeah, so absolutely. We've got a pilot line in a very small facility. We've got advanced manufacturing that sit 50 feet from product development. And so they are able to find engineering to manufacturing problems really quickly. We've made 1,000 changes to get to the point where we can build something. And then that allows us to get, a key subset of our demographic into the car, and we get immediate feedback. You can also get feedback from building prototypes with outside firms, because what you're looking for is market acceptance. But you absolutely, in my opinion, you have to do that internally.
It is amazing. The more I hear Bill talk, the more I realize how much food and cars can have, or buggies can have in common. We also have an in-house R&D. That's another thing we built out over the last 2 years. So we have a fully dedicated R&D team. We have a kitchen right here in Park City. And then we work with the R&D folks within each of the co-mans. And that actually is something that really does differentiate the co-mans as well. It's not just about cost or efficiency, reliability. It's what is their staff like and how quickly can we work together, because innovation is such a key pillar of our strategy. So we work with them very closely. And then we use AI for our sensory testing. So like the market acceptance, for us, we do a lot of consumer sensory testing, in-home use testing, and then we'll use AI to help us with the analysis and understand how we tweak. So we work back and forth, and then we get bench tops, from the manufacturers, and then we continue to work together. You mentioned this earlier about like R&D, then transferring it to the operations. Then we have to see if you can scale, because a lot of times we make some great stuff, and the ops guys are like, we can't make that on a line. So there's always that tension, which is also why we've had our R&D in-house with our marketers too, because those two have to be really closely tied and continue to iterate.
Yeah, it's bad to have silos. It's great to have everybody together.
Yes. We've utilized CAD systems before, but being able to do it all in-house is so much faster. Like exponentially weeks faster. It used to take us about 6 to 8 weeks to launch a product before, and now it takes 3, maybe tops, and that's like taking our time. So yeah.
It takes me 2 years.
Oh no.
Okay, my question is surrounding patents. So we have to work with manufacturers who own patents because we're just barely starting production. And there's a limited amount of manufacturers who have this patent. And so where I get concerned is, what happens if there is something that happens to that manufacturer or whatever. We're trying to develop our own patent on the side, but that's going to take, a number of years. And I guess kind of correlating with that, I worry that they own the patent, but we're using our idea. Are they going to use that with other people? Are they, how do I protect my property while utilizing their patents?
It's definitely a risk. That's, I guess, where I go back to having a really good lawyer and writing that contract well. And then also their reputation in the industry. If co-mans have done that before, I think it would maybe get out. I think at least for the ones that we've worked with. So I think it's just being really choiceful, but it does sound like you're in a tough spot because there aren't that many. So you may not have as many options, but I think it's really like getting very clear with legal and being protected.
Yeah, I don't have a super smart answer for that one. It's more of the same. It's good contracts, good relationships. Reputation of the partner that you're dealing with. And then, if you can, on the side, address the risk with some invention of your own. It's a really good use of capital to find a way, around it. And it totally depends on the situation and how close you are with your partner and how much of a risk you perceive. Because if they're working with many other customers, and this patent is something that others have, if they're stealing other people's ideas, then they really won't be in business very long. So you both have something to lose.
Yeah, I might say we've been really good at being friends with our competitors. And if there are competitors in the space that you feel comfortable reaching out to sort of like validate those co-man, like maybe that's an option. But we have not been in that situation, unfortunately.
And I think part of that question is too trade secret versus patent. And obviously when you're sending it out, that it comes down to relationship, but also there are some things you can put in place that are outside of a patent legally that give you some strength, but then you also have to decide whether you're going to be able to defend that or not. It's one thing to have it on paper. It's somebody might just say, well, sue me. So I think that's a key, and knowing your partners is probably one of the best answers. Anyway, okay, we have any other questions? We have one here, and we have one in the back, and we'll do that sequentially.
Yeah, Angel Shelburne with 36th Street Capital, BlackRock, Equipment and Strategic Finance. Being that there's a range here from CapEx of equipment internally versus co-manufacturing, where your CapEx dollars may not go directly to equipment, how are you balancing your organic versus acquisitional growth? And what is your landscape ahead for Utah's footprint, investing in Utah's growth as far as headcount and so forth?
Sure, I'll take that a little. I have a few things to say. So firstly, we love utilizing Utah companies. A couple of our co-manufacturers are here in Utah, and they're fantastic. We also, our ring boxes are kind of awesome. They're like a little Pelican case, and those are made by a manufacturer right down the street from us, Lakeshore Plastics. They're amazing if you need a plastic or silicone type thing. But also, the landscape for us is different, and acquisition for sure. When we start to look at the men's ring space, when we started, we were, pretty lone. There were maybe like two in the time besides us. And so there is this sort of expression of the jewelry industry starting to condense. And so we do see that happening. And so it is on our radar, the thought of what is that going to look like, but I don't think we quite have the answer yet.
Well, so we are starting in Utah with a co-manufacturer. I think we expect to rapidly outpace the facility that we have. And so we are, it is on our horizon to install, either greenfield or brownfield bricks and mortar. And for us, the lease or the purchase of the plant is the small piece. It's the $50 million of robots that we have to put in place to scale an automotive style product. And so we are eager for support from states, and it's not just for, help finding deals and tax abatements, but we're looking at support for skilled labor. At the moment, we have a lot of welders. In the future, we'll have a lot of PLC programmers, and those are the, critical to find skills. And so there's a lot that you look at when it comes to finding the right location for what I think is a reasonably complex product. It's hundreds of parts that have to come together. It's a global supply chain, all of that. And then organic or acquisition, right now we're just organic. We're going to grow the two products we have. Down the road, there may be a targeted acquisition or two. We don't think of ourselves as, like, we're starting the first serial production car using EV technology, honestly, because it's easiest. But we don't think of ourselves as an EV company. We're a dune buggy company. We're a lifestyle brand. We make really cool, fun things that people want to buy. And we're kind of agnostic to the technology. And so, the way you think about that changes your point of view on acquisition growth versus organic. But at least for the next 5 years, it's going to be, we've got plenty to do to just get the two models that we've engineered into production and scaled.
I'll just be quick. So when Kodiak started, our co-man is right here in Ogden, and they're still our largest, and we have a great relationship. So that was something that I was fortunate to inherit. We plan to continue that. Since we were essentially invested in by L. Catterton, we've doubled the people, so our employee base has doubled. I will say, as a plug, it is sometimes challenging to find some folks And I don't know why, because I think once they get here, they realize how amazing it is. But it's been a bit of a challenge to relocate some, even marketing level folks, design and others. So we've had a little bit of a challenge there at times. But I hope that changes. And I know that's some of the intention is to help get, people aware of how amazing of a place this is to live. So as we continue to build and grow, we can attract that great talent. And then I just love having, I call this a branded house versus a house of brands. So we intend to continue to grow organically, and it enables us to really focus on one brand and make it absolutely amazing.
We had one right over here. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
David Brilliant, Techie, Utah. If there's one aspect of your supply chain that you could bring to Utah or integrate internally, what would that be?
For me, it would be, not to get too technical, but this is where my brain went. Like, there's a lot of dry capacity out there. So for us, like mixes and things, and it's pretty simple. But as we expand into new categories, frozen tends to be more complex, and ready to eat products are more complex. And there tends to be less capacity, so much more expensive. And so that's an area that we have explored. So just something that tends to have less, capacity in the U.S.
Yeah, I hate to get too political about this, but our first product is going to use an EV motor and drive unit. It's going to use lithium-ion battery cells and high voltage electronics. When I try and buy those in the United States, I'm paying 300% more than what I can pay for in China. I would love to have the option to buy that kind of technology locally, but it would be irresponsible of me to pass on a 300% cost difference on what is a very high quality, very highly commoditized product that honestly comes out of China. And so if we had the wherewithal to start investing in that technology, that would be really critically important to me. I would love to be able to do that.
That's why I'm here, Bill. I'm on it. Michelle.
Metal. We get rods of metal to make our rings, and this is why we can't say made in America, because the chief part of our ring is made overseas. Everything else is made and sourced here. It's so frustrating. But if we could have really good metallurgists, making this stateside at a cost that we could afford, that would be amazing. But as you said, Bill, it just doesn't make sense right now.
I mean, I'll figure out how to pass on a 200% increase, but 300% is crazy.
Yes.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions? We have maybe time for, actually, if we're going to end on time, we don't have time. Unless you have a pressing question. Okay, well, I'm just going to close with maybe a thought, and maybe we can let you have 15 seconds each as the most important thing you want someone to take away from today that could help them in their manufacturing business, and a key trend that they could leverage in manufacturing. But, let me just put a capstone on talent and labor. When I was running economic development for the state, one of the key things that manufacturers would say to us is we can't find enough skilled labor, welders, people that could lay up carbon fiber and things. We have an incredible applied technology college system here that can stand up a program very quickly. So I'd invite you, if you're trying to solve for a problem, go there, find out who they have. The Salt Lake Community Colleges are community colleges, groups that work with the trades. That's really important. Utah Manufacturers Association is a great group to go to also and be a part of, because when political change is going on and we're about to enter into a legislative session, and we continue to have record numbers of bills being run every session, you need somebody or a group that's watching out for your interests. And if you support these groups, if you're a part of these trade associations, even if you're small, that's contributing to keeping a watchdog eye on the political landscape. We have one of the most business-friendly environments in the country. That being said, we have to be aware. And we're growing, we're diverging, we're becoming more diverse as a state. So just be involved. And that would be my invitation to you today. and encourage you to seek out in places that maybe you haven't before. And if you don't know who your legislator is, always know. It's not that hard. Just pick up the phone and call them. They were elected for you. Okay, that's my soapbox pitch. I'll turn it to Casey, and then we'll go down the line.
Yeah, mine will be very short. I just want everyone to be inspired to be in manufacturing. It's not just tech. I love that this year we have retail involved in Silicon Slopes. We are a state far beyond just the software. That is not our, well, okay, it is probably our highest export is data, but let's make some of these other things a big part of our export. It was an issue that Governor Cox brought up to me a couple years ago, is we have more imports than exports as a state. So as a state, we need to create more products to create greater export, which makes everything more affordable. Because then everything trucking in is much cheaper because we've got something trucking out as well. So that all comes into consideration for the state's economy and our growth as a state. So manufacturing is a key part of that. And we need to increase that export. So I hope everyone feels a little bit of inspiration from these great leaders on the value and the impact that you can make with good old-fashioned manufacturing.
Yeah, I guess my 30-second advice would be, if you want to get into manufacturing, make sure you have 3 times the amount of money that you think you're going to need. We did not take any capital. We have not ever taken capital. We're bootstrapped. And it was a lot. It was a lot to go into an economic downturn and still be supporting something that, we had just enough cash to get through. So be careful, have a lot of capital.
Yeah, that's very true. I would say make sure your product is ready. Keep your teams lean. Build a good culture. Develop relationships. Resist the urge to expand before you're ready. Say no a lot until you're sure, because someone will come to you and say, "Oh, I'm going to die if I don't have somebody." And then the next thing you know, you've got 200 people, and you got 200 people who don't know each other. They don't get along. There's no culture. You've got divisiveness. And so keep it small, keep it lean. That drives innovation, and don't go scale until you know that you've got a product that works.
And I would just say there's no one size fits all. So it's very specific to your brand and the life stage that it is, and ensuring that your manufacturing footprint supports your strategy and being very clear on what that strategy is.
Thank you. No, thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this, and appreciate everyone attending.